Hey guys, we are digging into the Sasquatch Build-A-Figure wave of Marvel Legends with a figure that I was honestly very surprised to have been revealed. We are going to take a look at Deathlok today. This is a character that maybe a lot of folks don't know unless you really care about comic books. He is kind of obscure, but he's one that I definitely was a big fan of as a kid. So I'm really looking forward to tearing into this guy. He's got an enormous gun. He's just got a killer design, very nice looking sculpt, and I'm really excited for this one. Probably my second most anticipated after Cable. So he comes in that standard Marvel Legends box, same window, name at the bottom. We've got artwork on the side. We have got a product shot and lineup on the back, so pretty much exactly what you expect. So let's pull them out and take a look. Alright guys, so here is our Deathlok figure out of the box, and I have really been looking forward to this figure. He's got a lot of cool stuff going on. Comes with some really nice accessories, and it's just a cool, unique character, one that I remember from my childhood, specifically when I read the comics back in the 90s. He was a little more prevalent back then, at least in my comic reading days. I don't know which Deathlok this is. There have been multiple people that have become a Deathlok, so I don't know which one this is for sure. He also always reminds me of the mascot for Iron Maiden, Eddie. Just that head is 100% very much the same thing, although he came first. So, you know, take that for what it's worth. So let's take a look at the figure. We'll go through the overall sculpt and paint. Talk about maybe some parts reuse on this guy. I'm not 100% sure. Like usual, I don't know, but I've got a few inklings. So let's go over articulation first. The head can swivel. He's got some up and he's got some down. Arms can go out. They can spin all the way around, but they're going to hit his backpack. This is removable as well. You can pop it off. It's just pegged into the hole on the back, the standard hole that's in the back of a Legends figure. We've got bicep swivel, double jointed elbows. We've got hinged and swiveling wrists, and they are hinged differently. This is a vertical hinge. This is a horizontal hinge. There is a little bit of a crunch on the back, but the backpack is going to get in the way to some degree. He can crunch forward, waist twist. Legs can go out pretty far, but his right leg is going to hit the holster. So eventually that's going to become a problem. Pretty high kick forward, more than 90 degrees. Pretty good on the back as well. Thigh cut right at that line where the leg becomes unclothed, which is good. It kind of hides that cut a little bit. Double jointed knees. Boot cut, shin swivel, hinge. So the same standard Marvel Legends articulation that we've come to expect. He's not really missing anything. I'd say the only real downside is that sometimes you might hit this backpack and you might hit this holster. Otherwise, it's all pretty standard, and it works how it should. As far as the sculpt and the paint and the overall look of this figure, I could not be happier. I think they absolutely nailed this figure. The head sculpt in particular, to start with, is amazing. Tons of sculpted detail in there to make it look very zombie-like. He's got that metal plate on his head. There's a bit of a green, muddy wash over the figure, kind of a dry brushing to make it stand out a little bit more. It looks very zombified. I'm overall very happy with it, and like I mentioned before, he reminds me of Eddie, the mascot from Iron Maiden, and, you know, make that full head a zombie head and you would have an Eddie figure, basically. I think it's fantastic. I think they did a really good job translating this comic book look into a figure, and that head sculpt absolutely nails it in every regard. I'm very happy with it. The backpack is removable. Like I mentioned, it's just a peg, and it's got some nice sculpted detail in there. It's got little nicks and cuts, some wear and tear on it. The chest is very nicely detailed, got the yellow paint. The tube is removable, and it leads onto his belt. Just pegs in there. We've got the American flag. We've got his kind of cybernetic arm. We've got cybernetic legs. He's got very Colossus-style hands, but they're not exact reuse because they are smaller than a Colossus hand. Same with the arms and the legs. They're very Colossus, very Cable, but I don't know that they're exactly reuse in that regard. The arm could be. Maybe a reverse. The belt is sculpted really nicely. A lot of pouches, very 90s. Of course, like I mentioned, the cable from the chest will peg into this pack on the belt. It doesn't appear to be removable. I found no peg on it that I could pop apart, unless I'm just missing it somehow. But ideally, you could still remove it by popping the figure apart, but it doesn't come apart on its own. The belt does have that holster which houses one of his guns. We've got more paint over here on the arm. We've got paint that leads down onto the legs with the orange yellow stripe. We've obviously got more of that cybernetic look on the legs. We've got those knee pads. And then we have these boots down here that look very much Tony Stark. They kind of scream Iron Man to me. But apparently these are, from what I can find, new sculpts, new boots, and despite the fact that they look like Tony Stark, I think they very much fit the aesthetic of Deathlok here. They obviously go with the character, they just look very robotic. I just don't have tons of Iron Men in my collection to compare against. But in general, I am 100% satisfied with the way this figure looks. I don't think they could have gotten a much better comic adaptation of this figure in plastic. Alright, now as far as accessories goes, we've got two. Obviously he's holding one here. To start with, we've got the little pistol that you saw previously on his holster. It's just cast in a gunmetal black type plastic, similar to the cable guns, and it fits in the holster. It's got a scope, a lot of sculpted detail, but no real paint on it. But the gun that everybody wants to talk about is this humongous gun here, the mini gun. He can hold it in his right hand, and he has an open style gripping hand to kind of support it a bit more with the left hand. Now, one thing that the only real gripe that I got to say about this is that it is big, it is slightly cumbersome, and honestly I'm not really sure which way he's supposed to hold it. I believe it's this way, but then that kind of presents a problem with where the bullets need to go, because the trigger is up here on the top, and that's where the trigger finger is. So this is likely the way he's supposed to hold it, but he's actually not pictured holding it on the package. He's holding the other gun. So that said, this still works really, really well. I'm very happy. This is very much a Deathlok style gun. Very much something that you would see him carrying in the comics, something that just mows enemies down. He does have the bullets, and I don't know what you call something like this. I'm not a gun guy, but he's got this huge ribbon of bullets, and they just peg into this slot on the left side of the gun. It's got an actual bullet slot there that's kind of keyed to allow them to go in there. And the only real downside to this thing is that I see that it kind of wants to sit out straight, so my inclination is probably going to be to heat it up and then cool it back down to shape it in sort of an arcing fashion, just so it'll sit a little better. But right now, I mean, you can't go wrong with it. He just looks so awesome with this. So at the end of the day, I think my only real gripe with this figure is that I find at times it to be hard to pose him with the big minigun. That's really it. I think everything about this figure is executed at a very high level. Paint detail, sculpt, the overall comic likeness I think is spot on. His minigun is really cool. The other gun, the handgun, is just as cool but in a different way. And I don't think they could have really pulled this figure off any better if they tried. He's easily my second favorite in this wave, just being beaten slightly by Cable, and that's only because it's Cable, and they executed on that figure just as well. So we've got a great solid wave of figures here, and I think Deathlok is among some of the best Legends that I have bought in a long time. So that's going to do it for this look at the Marvel Legends Deathlok figure from Hasbro. Feel free to like, comment, subscribe, and share, and until next time.